Master Heldress of Cornwall has written these verses strictly to measure.
As for those who possess them, he commands and requests, right here at the beginning,
that anyone who has them should burn them, rather than share them with the kind of people who don't know a good story when they hear one.
He does not wish to have his verses circulated among those who prize money more than honor.
or among those who wish to hear everything but do not care to make a man happy with some reward they might wish to give.
Greedy, nasty, petty people. This world has been a transitory place.
You have so robbed it of all pleasure that there is no play or laughter anymore.
Generosity, tourneying, jousting, wearing lady sleeves and making love have turned into heaping up mounds of dung.
What good does it do one to pile up wealth if no good or honor issues from it?
If a man amasses 1,000 marks, he soon thinks he's just nothing, and yet he's afraid of losing it.
He doesn't trust his wife anymore.
He doesn't want to spend any of it.
For one missing penny would mar the perfection of those 1,000 marks he lost sleep over.
Before we begin the story for you, we really have to let it all out a bit in order to get to the proper frame of mind.
That way, when it's time to tell the tale, there'll be nothing left in me to spoil the telling.
Cursed be the day the strong box was ever forged!
Just as wheat is worth more than weeds.
And falcon more than buzzard, and good wine more than stagnant water.
So honest poverty is of greater worth than 1,000 marks amassed without joy and festivity.
And it's better to be gracious and frank than to be stingy and king of France.
Now I'll return to my tale and into my prologue, for I feel a tremendous urge to begin to tell my story without a lot of fuss and bother. Once upon a time!
Evan was king of England.
He maintained peace in his land.
And with the sole exception of King Arthur, there never was his equal.
He maintained chivalry and sustained young warriors by gifts.
Not empty promises.
For their services, he richly rewarded them every day.
He gave freely and unstintingly of his possessions.
And that is what every wise man should do.
Give and be careful about taking things back.
This King Evan, who ruled over the English, was a very wise man indeed.
He wished all his friends and placed them in positions of great honor.
So that when the hour of greatest need came, they got him out of any trouble.
This is quite clear to King Vagon, who held the realm in Norway.
Between him and the King of England, a war had lasted a very long time.
It began over something trivial.
Then many houses were set on fire.
And cities put to the torch.
And so many feet and haunches sliced.
And so many people wretchedly scattered.
But the country was so devastated.
I can't tell you the half of it.
The damage began to mount up so that Norway was nearly destroyed.
Afflicted with hunger and misery.
Then the wisest of counselors thought of arranging a marriage between Evan and the daughter of King Vagon named Eupheme. The world never held such a beautiful gem.
They told the king what they had in mind.
Lords, by God, I'll follow your advice and give him my daughter in exchange for a court and alliance, so that peace may be guaranteed.
When King Evan heard this, he was overjoyed.
This fight was well worth the hard work if I could have this woman to wife, for there is no greater treasure on earth. I want above all to wed her and bed her properly. I have suffered long for love of her.
And may God grant that you get possession of her.
For the girl comes from a very good family.
The king didn't delay.
I'm marrying Eupheme, the Norwegian princess.
No one was opposed to this.
For they thought they would get great relief and respite from war.
At the crack of dawn,
2 archbishops.
And 4 bishops sported the ships.
Together with 2 dukes.
and 4 counts. My lords, what's the use of prolonging the story? The sailors arrived in Norway.
King Vagon invited them at the court, and entrusted his daughter Eupheme to them without further delay.
And just as the wind changed, they returned. They reached the English port.
King Evan omitted none of the niceties when he came to greet his beloved. When he saw her, he greeted her gallantly,
She returned his greeting courteously.
which was most pleasing to the king. The king lingered to kiss her, and then sought to her comfort.
For her heart was a little bitter from the tiring journey across the sea.
festivities went on for a year. That was the custom in those days.
You lived life to the fullest then. I don't know how much it cost.
More than anyone could imagine.
During the celebrations, a count with twin daughters came to land.
2 counts married the daughters.
Each one claimed to have the older.
But one of the 2 must have had the younger.
There was a quarrel in the inheritance, for both of them wanted to have the land.
One wanted to share it equally.
The other said he would be a martyr and vile coward in battle before yielding an inch of it.
The case went so far that they set a date for hand-to-hand combat to be judged by the nobles of the country.
The king and his barons did their best to arbitrate and reach an agreement.
But both parties were
Adamant.
So, negotiations came to nothing.
Each one had the bad luck to be so severely wounded in the fight that they both died trying to prove themselves right.
Oh, great heavens! What a way to lose good men on account of 2 orphan girls! By the faith I owe St. Peter, no woman shall be allowed to inherit again in the kingdom of England as long as I reign over the land.
Everyone swore to uphold the decree.
Some did it in anger.
But most did it quite gladly.
The ones who had nothing to lose.
But as for those who had only daughters and huge holdings to bequeath,
Don't you think their hearts were filled with rancor?
King Evan left Chester and headed for Winchester, traveling there at top speed.
but wait till you hear the amazing thing that happened then while they were passing through the woods.
A great big dragon came whistling through the forest towards them.
They were ambling along, joking and chatting.
When it rushed into the midst of their company and stung them with its tail and grabbed them, it speared for a venom from its mouth that harmed and killed whoever it touched.
King Evan was greatly disconcerted.
The dragon flew around and around and around, and when it had finished its rounds,
It threw forth flames from its nostrils and charred the horses' backs.
After the flames, it breathed clouds of smoke that hid the light from view.
So they could scarcely see a thing.
Now King Evan was really worried.
the dragon killed 30 of his men. They took a break to eat the dead, gobbling them up.
We shall be disgraced if we return home in such a state. If there is any man among you who dares to battle that dragon and kills it, I will give him a county and his choice of any woman in the kingdom. Let him take the one he likes best, except, of course, if she's already pledged.
Nobody dared utter a word, no matter how much you promised to give.
No matter how much you cajoled and wheedled,
Nobody dared boast that he would attack it.
But the king had a young follower, Cador the Brave, an accomplished youth.
He was the bravest knight of all, the best loved and most valiant.
He was very much in love with the daughter of Renaud of Cornwall.
Not a woman in the realm was her equal. She was the most beautiful girl in the world, and they called her Euphemie.
Love took Cador's spear from him. He would be ready to prove himself immediately.
He contrived to disappear from the king's sight and headed into the woods at once. He made his way towards the dragon very quietly.
And saw the dragon already so stuffed with those half-charred dead men.
That it was already having trouble drinking blood and eating flesh.
Before it caught sight of Cador,
He'd struck it with his lance so that one jaw was torn open.
The dragon struck the horse and disemboweled it.
Cador fell right in the dragon.
Who nearly skewered him.
but Cador rallied at once.
He drew his sword, rushed at the dragon, and sliced its spine completely through.
And watered in his blood and prayed and shrieked.
but where is my beloved Cador? Who knows? No one? Nobody at all? Lord, I've had a dreadful day. If I lose Cador on top of everything, that will be the absolute height of misfortune.
Good sir, if I may make so bold to tell you truly, Cador the Brave has gone to seek the dragon, but it's not my fault.
Cador! Cador! Oh, what terrible suffering this beast has caused! I don't know what to do! Alas!
I'm here, your majesty.
The king came there with his men.
And Cato the Handsome severed the head of his dragon.
Whoa! The others were very much afraid of the dead beast.
All rejoiced greatly at the dragon's death.
Everyone marveled at the head.
They prepared a great feast for the king and his men.
Cador was given a very warm welcome because of his valiant conduct.
Cato speaks to you,
Who is certainly not his enemy.
She loved him dearly, but he didn't know it.
and if he doesn't ask her the king now that he has his choice wife,
Won't he look the perfect fool?
He wants to tell without delay.
he is suffering terribly for love.
But he won't do this right away. He still has to suffer a little first.
The king retired, all tired out after he'd eaten and drunk his fill.
And valiant Cato retired too.
His heart afflicted with terrible pain.
It was a little bit before daybreak.
He moaned and groaned and changed color.
Because of the venom and the fumes that the fierce beast had spewed at him.
When the king saw Cato lying there all pale and wan, he took and held him in his arms. He beat his breast and wrung his hands.
He suffered so he nearly died.
Send for Euphemie. She's the wisest doctor in all the land. Ah! I will give you a rich gift, my friend, and a fine reward if you can heal him.
I can cure him in 2 weeks, so well that there will be no trace of illness.
Hear me, my people! If she cures my nephew, she can marry any man in the land.
Sworn and witness!
She thanked him for the symptom blow.
The girl had done her work so perfectly that within a week, truly she had cured him of his infirmity. By the grace of our Lord.
But the way she handled and held him when he was sick made love for her grow stronger.
Love laid siege to him more than before.
The more he saw her, the more he wanted to.
And from his desire to see her, his heart grew very bitter.
Alas, is this what comes of love? Such dreadful pain and such bitterness. Love gave me the courage to perform a mighty deed for her. But now, love has made me a coward before you, Pete. I could reveal my love to her.
But the girl might think he just wants her as a mistress.
She has saved me from one malady, but a much worse one now poisons me. I can't reveal my love to her, but I don't think it's a good idea to conceal it either.
It's better to be silent.
Love has caused me great distress. I have no hope of being cured.
He was awake all night,
Suffering, groaning.
for love had seized control of him.
Now, I want to tell you about the girl who served as his physician.
She came and went often to see how the patient was doing.
If she loved him before, she loved him more now.
No one should be surprised by this. We've seen so many times before how embers and stubble can catch fire without the slightest effort, where there is wind.
Euphemie is driven wild, seeing each day what she desires and being deprived of her desire.
She wants Cador to know that she would have no other lover but him, but she doesn't have the courage to tell him that she's in love with him.
My God, I have cured many a man, but I have been badly repaid by the last one. I caught this disease of love from Cador. This young man is highly contagious. Damn this whole relationship. Damn that dragon, whoever raised him. Damn the cursed venom that made Cador so sick. He gets any woman in the kingdom, damn that too. The king offered me any man, but I can't just ask for Cador. That wouldn't be fair, for he is first throw of the dice. God, what an awful situation. Why did I cure him so fast? I could have kept visiting him.
It was a little before daybreak.
She had no respite from her pain.
She lay naked in her ornate room, and Cador was in the chamber below.
It was still before dawn when the girl made her move. She jumped to her feet, rushed into her lover's room, and said to him,
Ami, speak to me, Ami.
Sweetheart, your lament has filled my heart with great sorrow. If you suffer, I will bear that pain. I will rejoice in your joy. For everything about you fills me with joy. The way you look and walk and talk, it elevates me in every way. I want to devote myself completely to you.
Swear to me by all that's true that this very month you will come to me and take me, beloved, as a reward for my services.
Mademoiselle, the king swore to give me land and a wife is my choice. But I wouldn't take the best of the top 3 in the kingdom if you denied me, Belle Euphemie.
Sir, are you saying this lightly?
No, my heart can never change. For you must help me. I'm still suffering from a new, terrible sickness.
Sir, what are the symptoms of this disease?
Dearest, I am hot and cold at once. I think I am bewitched. I want to eat and yet I can't. When I sleep, I wake up in such pain that I'm nearly perishing.
Dear, sweet friend, we really need some medicine, for we both have the same disease. What is the name of this malady? If you know, don't keep it from me.
Lovely one, I've heard that those who suffer the bitter pangs of love can be healed by a single kiss.
If I can be cured by a kiss, then I'm certainly being cheated if my sweet friend doesn't kiss me.
Each takes the other by the hand.
They are so carried away by this.
They cannot prevent themselves from putting them out.
This is not a comradely kiss.
But a kiss of such savor that it savors much of courtly love.
A good shepherd seasoned the dish. There wasn't too much or too little salt.
Nor did it taste bad to them at all.
For if it had tasted bitter to either of them, they wouldn't have stayed at the table so long.
Beloved, I am your lover. Your own sweet self has vanquished me after a long and mighty battle.
I love you truly, like no one else in the whole world.
Now they're both more eager than ever to demand their reward of the king.
What if he proves false?
What if he breaks his word?
A person deeply in love is filled with doubt and cannot keep things straight.
He doesn't know what he knows. Love's anguish is of no trifling matter.
Now, I must tell you, they are suffering because they found their kiss so well seasoned, neither too much nor too little salt, that they are in agony for fear of missing the next course.
Let's go to the king.
And tell him of our desires.
They can't stop kissing.
Why should I prolong the suspense? The next day they came at a very early hour to ask the king to fulfill his promise.
They did not speak privately.
On the contrary, they were heard by 100 barons who were waiting to attend the king at mass.
I request the reward that you promised, sire, for killing the dragon.
And you shall have it. A county and a wife of high degree. No available woman will reject you if you wish.
This is reasonable, it seems to me.
That's a lot.
Good fortune to a king who gives so freely.
And is so liberal with his possessions.
Sire, keep your promise to me for having cured your nephew, about whom you were so distressed. I took great pains with him and saved his life.
My lovely friend, I will never lie to you.
A
king must never lie.
You shall have the lord of your choice. Just find me one who is free, whoever it is. Ask him of me.
I ask of you, sire, no more and no less.
Name your choices.
Euphemia.
Cador, you shall have 1,000 pounds a year and anything under the sun that Euphemia's father, Count Renaud, holds in fee for me.
Now it would be a good idea to explain. This land should have been this lady's, but she no longer has a right to it.
For, as you know, because of the counts who killed each other so disgracefully on account of the twin maidens.
Women and girls have lost the right to lay claim to land.
Before tierce was sounded, Belle Euphemie was given away. Valiant Cador became her fiancé.
Then they were taken to the cathedral.
Where an archbishop married them.
Plenty of abbots and bishops were there.
And dukes and barons and princes.
And the king, who loved and cherished them, had a marvelous nuptial feast arranged.
Only slightly less splendid than his own.
Now the valiant Cador has his beloved.
They didn't have to ask any longer.
They could take their pleasure to their heart's content.
Whoever has long been deprived of what he has most desired, I won't pity him if he doesn't help himself to it.
Cador and Euphemie returned to Cornwall.
Euphemie's father, Count Renaud, made Cador overlord of all.
And there was never any discord between them.
Cador held the count as dear as his own father, and loved the countess and her mother.
But Count Renaud didn't live much longer.
After the feasting and this joy, he lived only a year and a day.
It's the same for all of us. Whatever a man's clever schemes or plots,
Whether he wants to or doesn't deign to. He has to die, and so do we all.
Strong or weak.
Proud or humble.
and that is what Renaud the Good did.
Cador mourned the count profoundly. Let's not talking of death now. It's not such a good idea to dwell on it.
Let it please God to be mindful of the dead.
From now on, you shall hear a lively tale. One without any more fuss or ado.
Of Cador and his offspring begins such a tale of adventures you've never heard of in any book.
It just so happened that it pleased God to have Euphemie conceive a child.
God, in your mercy, make this fruit healthy, and let it ripen as if it were yours. And do not let it be defective from our sin, and let the child have proper limbs. And when Euphemie is delivered of it, let her be healthy, and let the child live.
Amen.
My dear, I am deeply concerned that our child might be female. If God allows her to be born, then King Evan may not allow her to inherit our land and money because of those two counts and those twin girls.
Dear, sweet sire, God who created and who watches over mankind has decreed that the mother should be happy and the father pleased with any child.
Hear me, sweet friend. Jesus, the pious, true, and good, created Eve from Adam's rib, so that they would be of one mind, as they are made of one substance. Since, my sweet, our flesh is one, let our will be one as well.
Sweet Lord, I will refuse you nothing that your heart desires.
Hear me, sweet friend. When it is time for you to give birth, which will happen in God's time, you shall have only one woman, my cousin, to deliver you. Sweet love, whichever you have, male or female, you shall have her announced to me in the presence of all, that you have given birth to a fine son. For if we have a daughter, she won't get a single shred of our earthly possessions. We will raise her as a boy, watch her closely and keep her covered up. That way no one will be able to challenge you.
May God see fit to punish me if I do not do this most willingly.
The Countess grew heavy with child.
Count was distressed by her discomfort.
The child pressed upon her and kicked her and jabbed her.
The day of her confinement grew near.
Now you know that I have no special interest in telling how the lady
Suffered torment!
or how her body was.
Contorted in childbirth!
But I will say this, she went to labor and had the baby, no matter how much pain it caused her.
Now, let us turn to the child and clear things up and reveal whether it was a boy or a girl.
My lords, it was a girl.
She was a triumph of nature's art.
Nature, who has great powers, came to the child, took hold of it and said,
I have been very sparing with good material, but now I'm quite bored with crude work and vulgarity. Now I want to take pains with this one. In her, I shall assemble more beauty than can be found in 1,000 of the most beautiful girls in the world. Once in a while, I must show what I can do.
Never, in truth, lived a more beautiful creature in this world.
as near as I can estimate, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the girl.
Except that she's too beautiful.
Nature will never work so well on any mortal being again. Now, I will tell you truly what happens next. The woman who is with the Countess came into the room all smiles and cried in the presence of all the barons.
Rejoice, good Sir Count. Jesus the pious, the true, the good, has granted you a most beautiful son, a fine addition to the family.
Huzzah!
Count Cador was in a state of tremendous uncertainty, for he didn't know the truth.
With uncertainty, hope was mingled, and with hope, uncertainty.
Huzzah!
Shush! My lady has no need of noise.
Huzzah!
His desire to know the truth took away any feeling of shame which would have kept him from approaching a lady and child bed. Oh.
How are you, dearest love?
There will never be pain too great for me to endure for the sake of your well-being.
I wanted to know how things turned out, whether you gave birth to a boy or a girl.
You have a daughter, the most beautiful creature ever placed in this world by nature.
My dear, I want to disguise her and make a male of a female. We can't be sure of ever having a son, but if we do have one, by chance, we'll turn this one back into a girl. That way no one can accuse us of treason or felony. We shall call her Silence, after St. Patience, for silence relieves anxiety. May Jesus Christ, through his pleasure, keep her hidden and silent for us, according to his power.
However nature and custom may have felt about it, the child was named Silentius.
There was a seneschal in the land who had been raised with the Countess.
He loved Belle Euphemie more than his own daughter.
He lived in a forest near the sea.
The Count had taken a great liking to him, for he had heard many a good thing about him.
And the man was very loyal.
Lady, I will send for him and entrust the child to him.
He'll build a house in the woods, isolated and solitary.
The lady shall be there with the child.
There will be few others in the household.
All sworn to secrecy.
The lady who was to misraise her child was in agreement with the plan, assuring them in the same things in her role as nursemaid.
That everyone would be deceived.
The seneschal took the lady and the child and constructed a charming lodging in the woods near the stake. He installed the lady and the child there.
When nature realized that they had tricked and deceived her by turning her work into the opposite of what she had turned out, you can imagine how disturbed she was. They have insulted me by acting as if the work of nurture were superior to mine. By God, we'll see about that. There's nothing on this earth created by nature that can be disnatured in the long run. Nurture is disguising my creation. I put more beauty into her than can be found in 1,000. And now they have made a male heir of her who'll go out in the wind and the scorching sun as if she is of crude workmanship. If I don't unmask her in the long run, Nurture's power will be proven stronger than mine. Nature mourned and grieved.
She scolded and shook with anger.
She was furious with Nurture.
But it didn't help a bit when the child was of an age to wear clothing.
In order to deny her nature, they took care to dress her in male clothing made to her measure,
They taught him measures of good conduct.
to honor both great and humble.
They taught and instructed him so well that Silence was most beautiful of all.
He was more valiant and noble than all the others put together.
In order to build up his endurance and teach him to ride.
The seneschal took him through the streams and woods, which were plentiful in the countryside,
He took him out often in the scorching heat.
in order to make a man out of him.
He was so used to men's usage and had so denied women's ways that little was lacking for him to be a man.
For whatever one could see, was certainly male.
But there's more than this that meets the eye. He's deceived beneath the clothes.
By the time he was in his 12th year, none was his master anymore.
And they practiced wrestling, jousting, or skirmishing. He alone made all his peers tremble. Silence was deeply disturbed by this, for her consciousness told her she was practicing deception by doing this.
In her 12th year, Nature appeared, grumbling and complaining and blaming her. This is a fine state of affairs. You, conducting yourself like a man, running about in the wind and the scorching sun, when I used a special mold for you. 1,000 people lost out because I stuffed all of their beauty into you. And there are 1,000 women in this world who are madly in love with you because of the beauty they see in you.
They probably think I've got some equipment that isn't there.
And all of the women who love you now
Might hate me with all their hearts if they knew what I really was.
You have no business going off into the forest.
So, no more hunting, jousting, shooting off arrows.
Desist from all of this. Go to a chamber and learn to sew.
You are not Silentius.
Not Silentius. Who am I then? Silentius is my name. I think, or I'm other than who I was.
But then Nurture arrived on the scene and saw that he was talking to Nature.
Hey! What are you doing here?
Nature is helping fix my unnatural behavior. No woman of my lineage ever behaved in such a way, nor will I do so any longer. I will keep to woman's ways. I won't cut my hair short or live like a boy with bow and quiver.
Nature, leave my nursing alone. I'll put a curse on you. Be gone in disgrace.
I've never heard of this happening to anyone. Whenever I happen to get undressed, I'm afraid my sex will be discovered. I'll put all this behind me and live very quietly from now on. The good Lord who created me will be my shepherd and my guide. Was any female ever so tormented or deceived by such vile fraud as I have been out of greed, just to inherit land and money? I certainly haven't heard of one.
Now silence. I've done a very good job of turning a noble child such as yourself into a defective male. Nature, I'm undoing all of your work. No reason you get over here and do your thing.
Believe what I say, friend Silence, and fortify your heart. For if you are true to your nature and live as a woman, you will not train for knighthood. You will lose your horse and chariot, and if King Evan finds out, you get nothing.
Reason stayed with him so long and admonished him so severely.
That Silence understood very well. He had listened to bad advice ever to think of doing away with his good old ways to take up female habits.
Then he began to consider the pastimes of a woman's chamber.
Which he had often heard about, and weighed in his heart of hearts all female customs against his current way of life. And saw, in short,
that a man's life is much better than that of a woman's?
Why trade a man's life for the pastimes of a woman's chamber? Now I'm honored and valiant. No, I'm not. Upon my word, I'm a disgrace if I want to be a woman. I have a mouth too hard for kisses and arms too rough for embraces. One could easily make a fool of me in any game played under the covers, for I'm a young man, not a girl. I don't want to lose my high position. I don't want to exchange it for a lesser, and I don't want to prove my father a liar. I'd rather God strike me dead, whatever nature may do. I'll never betray the secret.
Have you ever heard of such forbearance as we see in Silence?
I'm not saying that he didn't go through periods of hesitation and inner conflict.
The human heart thinks a great deal.
Turns to deep thoughts it harbors over and over again.
Far too often.
And causes itself a great deal of grief.
Silence is heart was divided against itself.
Now, the manuscript tells us that there were 2 minstrels in the land.
The best you ever heard of. Thank you very much. They made a tour of England. Thank you very much.
And we're very successful there. Thank you very much.
They went to Cornwall and were well received by Count Cador.
Thank you.
After a week, they headed for the coast.
For they wanted to cross over to Brittany.
Nightfall surprised them in a stretch of open country next to a huge forest near where Silence and the Seneschal lived.
The fog was so thick, they could hardly see.
As the forest grew denser,
They spied Silence's lodge. Who's in there?
The people
inside. Who are you and what do you want?
Open up, and we'll let you know. We are minstrels.
is there anyone inside who might offer us shelter for the night?
Yes,
friends, there is!
After the minstrels had finished their meal, they were quick to practice their trade. They played such sweet melodies that there wasn't a one who did say,
Surely God has brought them here.
Thank you very much.
We wish her well guided them to us.
Thank you.
but after 2 nights have passed, they would play a very different tune. Believe me.
After they had played a great deal,
They were exhausted from the day's ride.
Silence was there to help them undress, seeing to their bed covers. He accomplished these tasks most charmingly. He brought each of them a pillow.
They were amazed that a child of such tender years and noble bearing was so accomplished at serving.
oh, friend, whoever you are no villain and no fool. Thank you very much.
May God who made you keep you safe.
Lords, and may God bless you.
Then, Silence went to bed. But he didn't sleep a wink all night. His heart said,
Hey, Silence. Those clothes you're wearing and that sunburned face of yours make you believe that you're a boy.
What that boy has under his clothes has nothing to do with being male.
If King Evan died today or tomorrow, women could inherit again, except that you know nothing of women's arts.
I need to learn something that will serve me in good stead, for who knows the future.
What if you try and become a knight with our tower?
Women can't bear arms.
What if you go abroad and acquire some experience and gain some expertise?
I should go with these minstrels.
If you serve them well and work hard, you will learn to play instruments.
If I'm slow to chivalry, minstrelsy will be of use to me.
Silence equips himself well and saddles his beautiful hunter.
Then he stained and disguised his face with an herb he found in the woods. Whoever looked at his complexion would certainly think him of low station.
The ship loaded free, then he went on board. The minstrels arrived immediately after, paid their passage, and boarded the ship.
The sailors weighed anchor,
Hoisted their sails and left.
They were on their way to Brittany.
Good Lord, is that he?
Heavens no, certainly not. This boy has a very bad complexion compared to the other.
So help me God, that is our valet from last night. He serves exactly the same way, even though he looks completely different.
Indeed, it's strange. The boy last night had a very rosy complexion, while this one's all yellowish, as if it had been stained with nettles or wine dregs.
Gentlemen, what's all this talk of someone who served you so well last night? If I have neglected anything, I will do better next time. I'm still very young. If you deign to teach me something, I will learn it with all goodwill.
He smiled and they looked closely at him and realized they had been deceived.
It is you! You must travel with us, and we will instruct you in our noble art.
But let us return, good lords and ladies, to Cornwall, Silence's recent home.
The Seneschal was used to Silence going off hunting, so he didn't think anything of it.
Until it began to grow dark.
And then he began to worry.
And when the youth didn't return,
He knew the minstrels had robbed him as a young lord.
Then you could see tears shed.
And pulling and tearing of hair.
and the wringing of hands and beating of breasts,
ladies and girls,
Well, the ringing that they did.
That's the least of it, for the seneschal and the lady who had Grey Silence fainted.
And that caused great consternation.
And when they recovered from their swoon,
They sent 100 men throughout the land to find Silence and bring him back.
And when Cador, Silence's father, heard the news, and Euphemie, his mother,
Their hearts were filled with such anguish.
that no one could possibly describe it.
They kept on fainting
And being revived.
and fainting.
And being revived.
And the nobles who came to their assistance.
Were scarcely able to keep from fainting themselves.
Silence! Our beautiful son!
What dreadful suffering you caused us.
He was the mirror of the world.
The best thing for us to do would be to drown ourselves at the bottom of the sea. Drown and end our lives.
When we are afflicted with such terrible suffering, ending our lives would be the lesser evil.
Our joy went down to the sea.
We have no fear of anything worse, no hope for anything better.
Last night we lost both fear and hope.
Cador knew that minstrels had taken the mirror of the world.
And for this crime, he had all minstrels banished from his lands. Any who were captured would be burned or hanged. Any who could have captured one, but let him escape, would suffer the same fate that the minstrel would have.
I don't care what anyone says. Those minstrels were not at all to blame, did not know that he was the Count's son.
And if we can believe the story so well,
Before the end of the 3rd year, he had completely surpassed his masters and earned a great deal of money for them.
They were so humiliated by this, they didn't know what to do.
And because he found much greater favor in court than they ever had,
They were afraid the youth might change his mind and not want to stay with them any longer.
And don't you think their hearts are just filled with rage?
Can't you imagine how deeply ashamed they felt when in the presence of king or count?
he was asked to play harp or viol as much as he pleased.
And they were silenced so people could hear him.
Silence was already so handsome, he was clearly no servant, but a young man of quality.
it was already his 4th year that he had served these masters. He changed his name to an even stranger one.
In public, he called himself Maldouis, because he thought himself very badly brought up.
And very badly educated in regard to his nature.
And also to conceal his identity.
He gave the very best of service, and still exerted himself in every way to do the minstrel's bidding. He still waited on them with great care, serving them and taking their boots off.
As Silence became more and more admirable, his masters became more and more deceitful.
He doesn't even have 4 years experience, and he's outdone us like this. He's about as welcome as a toothache, and he's likely to continue giving us trouble. It's like the dog that beats the leg of the man that feeds it. It's like the one who cuts the stick that beats him. We've created a master out of our servant. And he's going to continue doing this because he's got all our knowledge. He's become so popular that he will rob us of all future profits. What can we do? If by one bad deed a man can avert 500, old friend, should he refrain from it?
Not at all, dear friend. It stands to reason.
Then let's kill this vile boy. We'll have nothing but trouble as long as he lives.
Friend,
Our thoughts and wishes are the same. Our route takes us through a forest. If that's it, we'll pretend to get lost. And when we find a likely spot, we'll play a nasty trick on him.
thus, they plotted the whole thing. They were so inspired by the devil, who kept urging them to do this wicked deed, that pity seemed hard to them, and mercy bitter and sour.
The more they hated the youth, the more they pretended to be nice.
That night, Silence dreamt that wild dogs wanted to tear him apart.
He awoke from his dream in such a terrible state that he slept no more that night.
As for the minstrels, they were tormented and feverish from their evil thoughts.
You can imagine how weary all 3 of them were from being unable to sleep that night.
The 2 because of the evil they were planning. And the 3rd because of the evil he feared.
I'll strike the first blow. That'll increase my share of the money. Take it easy, comrade. We'll share the sin and the earnings equally. But for now, let's tell him to get ready.
Silence was listening, and he heard them.
There was now no doubt in his mind that these 2 desperados would, if given half the chance, make his dream of the 2 dogs come true.
Get up! Little do you know what a hard journey you have to make.
A hard journey is dreadful indeed, and he richly deserves his evil fate who deliberately puts himself at a disadvantage.
The
The road is difficult. It's going to be a long and strenuous day's travel. Gentlemen, before I make a move, you must tell me where you are going. For you could be headed for some place where someone might do me a bad turn if they happen to catch me before I can escape.
Friend, don't worry. When you say you feel threatened, we too are afraid you might be in danger.
If the criminals are on the left, we'll take the path to the right. And if they want to attack us, we'll all be here to help each other out.
If they strike, we strike too.
Oh, I know very well. You only be too happy to strike. You know very well indeed I would encounter my enemies whether I went with you to Spain or to France, or Auvergne or Germany. I'm staying here, and you go off, like upright and honest men. You have done much for me, and you would have done more if you could have. I haven't been able to do quite enough for you.
The minstrels were undone. Dear friend, good sir, take your share. And so, Silence took 100 marks as his portion, left the minstrels more than 100, and they went off in a hurry.
With his 100 marks, he easily made arrangements.
Silence took leave of France and was on his way to England.